Petra's 2003 album Jekyll Hyde gets its first ever vinyl release, courtesy of Girder Records. We'll take a look at the vinyl itself. I just got mine today. And we'll also do a quick look back at the album itself. It's all coming right up. Stay where you are. Hey there, y'all. Welcome back to another Tim Talks Christian Rock. Tim Risto here. Thank you so much for choosing this video to be a part of your day today. It is very much appreciated. If you haven't, please give this video a like. I would appreciate that as well. And if you are not subscribed, please take a moment to subscribe to my channel. Hit that bell notification button so that you get informed anytime a new video drops here on the Creative Christians channel and at Tim Talks Christian Rock. Without further ado, let's talk about this album here, Petra, Jekyll Hyde, originally released in 2003. I just got this newly released vinyl edition of the album from Girder Records in the mail today. This is, to my knowledge, the first time it's actually been released on vinyl. Back in 2003, I think it was only released on CD. Girder has also re-released it on CD in a regular and a deluxe version of the CD. I haven't picked those up yet. I'll probably pick up the deluxe version here at some point, but I definitely want to get my hands on the vinyl. So anyway, it arrived today. As you can tell, it's still in the shrink wrap. Haven't even opened it yet, so we'll go ahead and do that on camera in just a minute. I will read the hype sticker here, though, which says, "Epic hard rock from the world's most beloved Christian rock band, Petra, a metal monster of a record with a mix bigger than the early Metallica albums and more hooks than Poison and Dio put together." That's a quote from allmusic.com. Pretty cool. So we'll open this in a sec. First, let me give you a little bit of context for this, for those who are unfamiliar. Again, this came out in 2003. This was Petra's last studio album. Still is, I guess, technically to date. This was kind of touted as a bit of a comeback for Petra in a way, or a return to form, perhaps, I should say. But it was also a departure in some ways. What do I mean by that? Well, again, back in history a little bit, the last album by the Dream Team of Petra, which for those of you unfamiliar, is the members of Bob Hartman, John Schlitt, John Lowry, Ronnie Cates, and Louis Weaver. That was the version of Petra that many remember from the arena rock phase of Petra, really the John Schlitt era that started with Back to the Street and ran through, what was the album? Wake Up Call. Yes, Wake Up Call. And really that album, Wake Up Call, kind of ended that whole period and was kind of the second version of Petra, you could say, after the Greg X Volz era that most people identified with. Well, after Wake Up Call, Bob Hartman started to take a back seat in the band. He didn't want to tour anymore. Still was involved in writing the music and stuff like that, but not performing on stage so much. I think he even recorded on a number of the albums as well. But anyway, he took more of a back seat. John Schlitt took the reins of Petra, and they went through a phase of a number of different albums where they kind of experimented with different styles of rock music and praise and worship music to try and kind of meet the changing musical styles of the times. So I think they came out after Wake Up Call with No Doubt, which was a pretty good album. I really liked that one. They had a new guitarist on there who only lasted that album, I believe. And then you had things like Petra Praise 2, Double Take, which was the album of re-recorded Petra tunes, old Petra tunes. You had God Fixation, which was more of an indie rock kind of sound. And then you had Revival, I believe it was, which was in 2001, right before Jekyll Hyde came out. They all kind of were somewhat wildly different. None of them really landed. They were trying to address those changing musical landscapes of both the Christian music world, which was much more praise and worshipy, and, the rock world, which had initially in the 90s became more grunge-like and then went through other different variations and permutations as well. None of those Petra albums really landed. There are probably very few of those that are anybody's, favorite Petra album. But nevertheless, they were trying. And so when 2003 came along with Jekyll Hyde, this was touted as a return to more their rock roots after the more praise and worshipy revival album of 2001. And so it was in many ways. There's crunchy guitars on here. It's a heavy rhythm section, rhythm guitars, and heavy drums in some ways. But as much as that was there, and it's pretty much a largely hard rock album, it also has a departure, I should say, from the Petra sound that we really kind of knew before all the experimentation went on, the Dream Team era. So while it was harder and edgier in some ways, it was also it didn't quite sound like Petra. You had Pete Furler come on as producer for this album, and he did what I kind of say, or the analogy I use is kind of what happened to Rez Band for their last album, Lament, which was Glenn Kaiser's, kind of concept album, story album that he'd wanted to do for a long time. Finally had a chance to do, but you had producer Ty Tabor come on for that one, and while it's a great album, it also doesn't really sound like the Rez that we'd known from previous albums. The same is kind of true, maybe a little less so, but still kind of true with this album for Petra. You've got Pete Furler coming in, giving it an aggressive, kind of fresh sound, crunchy sound in the guitars, really good stuff, but again, doesn't exactly sound like Petra. So there's some context for what this is. Again, to me, it's both a underrated album and at also times an overrated album. So I'm kind of in the middle on this one. Still very much celebrating this vinyl release of the album. And anytime a Petra album is released on vinyl for the first time or reissued in a nice edition like what Girder does, it's cause to celebrate. But that briefly just gives you a little context and also kind of where I stand on the album. We'll talk more about that after we break into the vinyl. So let's do that next. All right, let's break into this. Here's the insert. This is a photo from the photo session for this album, of course, from back in the day. Never understood why you can't really see this guy. I'm not sure who that is, actually. Is that Pete Furler? I really don't know. But you can never really see them. But they're there. They're, of course, John Schlitt, Bob Hartman, and Greg Bailey on bass. And this side has all the lyrics, of course. So songs on here, Jekyll and Hyde is the opening track, which really is a very good song. I like that one a lot. All About Who You Know is another good follow-up. Stand, Woulda, Shoulda, Coulda, it's another pretty good one. Perfect World, Test of Time, I like that one. I Will Seek You, Life as We Know It, Till Everything I Do, Sacred Trust closes out the album. Come to the vinyl, which is in a paper and polyurethane sleeve, and here it is, a nice red and black kind of marbleized or mixed vinyl. There you go. The label that matches the style of the album cover. Side A and B. Kind of a translucent looking red and black mix. Looks pretty nice. Kind of cool. And a good tie-in with, of course, the red of the album cover, the red and the black of the album cover art. Now, of course, I just opened this, so I have not listened to the vinyl yet. But I will go ahead and run off real quick and check this vinyl out, and I'll come back and tell you how I think it sounds. One of the complaints that was levied against this album originally is that the mixing of the album, the drums and the bass are kind of hidden more. Like the guitars are front and center, vocals are good, but some of that bass work and the drum work are kind of a little more hidden in the mix. So if they remastered it, then maybe this was, or remixed it, I should say, maybe that was resolved in that process. If it was remastered, maybe it was slightly resolved, but really a remixing would probably be required to fix that. So I'll double check that. But let me run off and listen to this, and then we'll come back and chat some more. All right, I'm back, fresh off of a listen from this new vinyl edition of Jekyll and Hyde from Petra. one thing I noticed, it didn't take long for me to listen to this. One thing I noticed is that most of the songs on the album are like right around the 3-minute mark. Some are less than that. You got some that are 2:58, 2:35, 2:34, some right at 3 minutes, 3:04, 3:13, and only a few that are a little longer. The longest one on here is the last song, Sacred Trust, at 3:52, and then Life as We Know It is 3:27. Everything else is shorter than that. So it's like just under or just at about 30 minutes of music. So very short album in that regard. Moves pretty quickly. The songs are short and pretty tight for the most part. So it is short in that regard. The other thing I noticed listening to this, again, it's actually a pretty good album. It was fun to listen to it again. I enjoyed this. It's been a while since I'd actually sat down and listened to it from beginning to end. And just to confirm, it has been remastered. So by the excellent Rob Caldwell, who always does an excellent job remastering. But again, there's limitations as to what you can do with remastering. It's not a remixing of the album. So some of those same issues, although clearly they've been improved upon, are still there in terms of, the bass and the drums a little more hidden in the mix. The guitars are front and center, and Schlitt's vocals are good. But it is improved upon. It does sound good. I mean, it is a good sounding album. It's just what's your preference on the mix. And I do miss the drums and bass being a little more forefront. But again, this does seem to improve upon it. It sounds better than what I last remember it sounding like. So I think that's a definite improvement. This is just on one listen all the way through. Another thing I should mention, here on the liner notes, Petra at this point in its career in 2003 was listed as only being Bob Hartman and John Schlitt. Although Greg Bailey is in the mix, obviously, he's actually not listed as a primary member, at least here in the liner notes. The other thing, of course, this being a Peter Furler produced album, you've got some of his influences here, as well as calling upon some of his Newsboys bandmates, like Phil Joel on bass. Peter Furler, of course, played drums. Jeff Frankenstein is programming. The background vocals are by Greg Bailey, Jamie Rowe, of course, from Guardian fame, Phil Joel, and Peter Furler. That is one thing I noticed on the album, is a number of the songs that, where the background vocals come in. I was used to, of course, from the old days, hearing the Dream Team sound of the background vocals, which is very Petra sounding. A lot of these songs sound very Newsboys-ish in terms of that, especially when you hear those background vocals coming in. But a number of the songs do too, especially on side 2. Side 1 was great. I really enjoyed listening to side 1. I thought most of that, in fact, all the way up through the first track on side 2, Test of Time, really sounds good. It's fresh. It's a little different. Again, it's not all Petra sounding, but I like it. There's a hard crunching, guitar sound to so much of this. It sounds good. But then once you get to I Will Seek You, the second track on side 2, all the way through to the end of the album, it sounds more like Newsboys songs. I know Bob Hartman is credited as having written all these, but the way the songs are played, the way it's mixed, the way the album's produced, it definitely sounds more like Newsboys songs. In fact, I Will Seek You, that second track on side 2, sounds like John Schlitt singing a Newsboys song. And really through to the end of the album, it just doesn't quite sound like Petra at all. Again, that's just the influence of a producer and of having all these Newsboys talents involved in the album as well. So not really a knock on it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with giving a band, especially on their last album, a new, fresh sound, an opportunity to do something a little different. That's great. Petra's always tried to do things different, go back to, Beat the System. They did things different. A lot of different transitional points in the band's career. They've tried to do some different things. But again, just for being the final studio album, it does have a different sound to it that's not quite the traditional Petra sound that I've grown used to from previous albums. Again, not the ones immediately preceding this, because, again, they were very different. But, again, I do like the album. It's good. It's different. I think I like it more now than I did when I first heard it, even, and in ensuing years. So it's got a nice sound to it. Not my favorite Petra album, but still, it does have a good hard rock sound to it. But also has more. There's some little 90s vibes that still creep in. Again, this was 2003, but I still sense some 90s vibes in some of the music. Some early 2000s vibes coming in. Obviously, the Newsboys sound is in there. So it's got a little more of a modern feel to it of that time, and less of the Petra sound. So, your mileage may vary as to what you prefer and all that. I think it's a good album. Is it the best, finale album for Petra? I don't know. Probably not my ideal way to go out, but nevertheless, it's a good, strong hard rock and indie rock kind of album. They experimented with that with, again, No Doubt and God Fixation. I think this one still kind of shows them still experimenting a little bit, even in this final studio album. It's probably the strongest album since No Doubt when that came out, which, again, whatever year that was. I think it was, I don't remember. I'll have to look up the years, maybe mid-90s or something, but probably the strongest album since that one. And I like No Doubt quite a bit. In fact, it'd be a toss-up between Jekyll Hyde and No Doubt as to which one I would say comes out on top. But anyway, this is a good vinyl edition. You can't go wrong with this. It's good to have it available on vinyl. Thankful that Girder released it on vinyl, and it sounds good. So you can't go wrong with Petra on vinyl. Again, I don't know if we'll see any more vinyl releases of Petra albums. No Doubt I wouldn't mind seeing. Petra Praise the Rock Cries Out would probably be a good one. Beyond that, I can't imagine them releasing God Fixation or, Double Take or even Revival on vinyl. Maybe remastered CDs at some point in limited runs or something, but who knows. So anyway, feel free to let me know in the comments down below what you think of this album. If you've picked up the vinyl, how do you think it sounds? Does it improve upon the mix? Did you care about the original mix maybe being, a little shallower on the drums and bass? What are your thoughts? Would love to hear it down below. That's all I got for today, though, y'all. Just thought we'd take a peek at this new vinyl edition and kind of reminisce about the album a bit. But anyway, go out and listen to some great Christian rock. Make it some Petra, Jekyll and Hyde today. And above all else, remember, stay in God's Word. Blessings, y'all. See you next time. Bye-bye.